The fourth book, the book that we're in right now, is about the importance of playing active games with our children. So playing games with our children, but especially you'll see from the ahadith, from some of the emphasis, from some of the examples, the importance of playing active physical games with our children. Now, the book that we're covering, it has three main parts. The first part was the part that we already covered. In that book, or that part of the book, we went over the ahadith of the Ahlul Bayt themselves, collectively reviewed the ahadith, and we saw where the Ahlul Bayt themselves would actively play games with their own children. They would also play games with the children of others. So we saw some of those examples, when they would give us the commands, the direct commands to allow your child to play for the first 7 years. So that's what we covered over there. Hopefully we remember these points. So right now, hopefully we remember two of the points that we came away from last time. Two of the very important points that we came away from after we looked at the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt were the following. Number one, playing is a real need of our children, and it's hardwired into their fitrah. Why do I say it's a real need with so much emphasis? The reason is, as parents, if we recognize something is a need of our child, my child needs this, then we'll make it happen. But we deal with needs differently than we do if a child's being spoiled and demanding, right? A kid wants this, I will respond differently if I feel like this is a need, all right? So that's number one. Number two is that if we can address this need properly, from the time the child showed interest, right? So we meet this need. Either we won't face the problems in tarbiyah that other parents face. If we do, let's say our children do have some of those issues, if we've addressed this need, we're going to be able to fix those problems very easily. Okay? Now, the third point is another truth. Those first two things are true, but there's something else true. This need for playing active physical games, unfortunately, is one of the most neglected parts of Islamic tarbiyah. And we learned this principle before. Our principle was this: Islam is a package deal. If I want to get the results of Islam, I have to implement all of Islam. I can't implement part of Islam and then blame God. Why is it I'm not getting the results? Well, the answer is very simple. I wouldn't do what Islam said, and then after that I don't get the results. It's a package deal. So this one, unfortunately, is one of those parts that is ignored. Now, today's discussion is mainly two parts. I'm just saying this big picture so we kind of know where we're going. Today's discussion is two main parts. The first part is, well, if this is so effective and so needed, and it will work miracles, and it will change our lives, and our kids will be the soldiers of Imam Mahdi, why is it that so many parents would not do this? We're going to cover some of the reasons why it is that parents perhaps don't use this effective technique. You and I will also keep these reasons in mind. First of all, for our own personal development. Perhaps when we hear some of these reasons, it'll resonate with us. And we'll realize that some of these things are blocks, barriers in my own mind that are keeping me from doing it the way that the Ahlul Bayt have said. The second one is you and I also have another principle in mind. In order for us to save our own children, you and I don't think, well, I just need to have my kids and I raise my kids right. We feel a responsibility for all the children in the community, right? My nephews, my nieces, other believers. That means, in addition to us learning these reminders, in smaller circles, we're going to share the same principles. So the reason for going over all of these reasons is that brothers and sisters, when they're interacting with others, they're going to bring up these reasons and help them to be able to do their responsibility as well. So that was part number two, was those reasons, why it is that people wouldn't use this game-changing technique. And then the last part, the third part of the book, will be what are the characteristics, if I want to play a game with my children, what are the characteristics that the game that I play with my children should have? We're going to call these the 14 secrets of wise parents, right? These characteristics, if they're there, then inshallah we'll see those results. Our case studies will mainly be about those 14 techniques. We normally go over the case studies as well, but that'll be when we go over these 14 techniques. The games, this is also important to keep in mind. I'll mention 14 characteristics. It doesn't mean all 14 have to be there in every single game, otherwise it's not beneficial. No, there's some games that will have 1, 2, 3 of these characteristics, but altogether, as parents, we don't want to have missed out on these 14. Right? We want to make sure that these are there so that our parents, our children can see the results. Now, so those are the things that we're going to try to cover today. But first, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. All right. So now we're on to our new discussion. And we want to answer that million-dollar question. If this technique of playing games with children is so effective, why would it be the case that so many people ignore this? Everybody wants to do right by their kids. Why is it that this technique isn't employed? Another reminder, the reminder was this, brothers and sisters. You and I, we learned, if we are able to make sure our children feel intense love, right? If my house is one where the kids who grow up in this house feel intense love, then major tarbiyah problems will be resolved, right? Intense love, but they have to feel it. Then we talked about before the ways that we learned that love was the foundation of tarbiyah. Then we talked about ways to make our children feel intense love, and one of them, of course, was the playing the games. All right. So question or answer number 1. And again, you and I, we're going to look at this, see if this is part of our problems or if this is something we can share with others. Why is it that people would not? And by the way, when you hear the 14 characteristics, you'll see that there is something lacking in some of the games that we play. Number 1 reason is that people have a lack of awareness of what the real need for their children and games. Right? Nobody wants to hurt their kids. The reality is, many of us simply don't know just how important physical games are for our kids to make it. Normally, we're like this, right? If you don't feel something is a need, we're not going to feel motivated. I have to realize this has to happen, then I'll make it happen. Okay? So, just as an example now, later when the pop quizzes happen, then I'll be requiring some of these things from our people, perhaps. Okay? What were some of the benefits of playing the active games? I'm going to list them this time. All right? Number 1, it creates that deep emotional bond between me and my kids. If I will play those games with them, it's going to create that, right? Number 2, a lot of the children's potential will show up in those games. I don't know how many of you are watching when your kids play sports, right? But you'll see the potential of the kids start to show up there. The child will learn how to interact with other people, their surroundings, winning and losing. They're going to learn how to do that. When our children play physical games, our children turn out brave. They can scrape their knee, they can lose, they can fall down, right? They're going to make them brave. It's going to help get rid of the anxiety in children if they can play these active games. Our children will learn independence, to stand on their own, to trust themselves, to believe in their own abilities. Later we'll talk to them that your abilities all come from Allah, but this idea that that comes from me playing games. It'll teach a child to use their intelligence and their memory. When you watch these children go through a game, they go through it 1 time, 2 times. After a while, they're watching, they're learning from this. Many of our children, you and I will notice that if you try and sit them down and have a dars, right? You're going to learn. Step one, step two, right? The person doesn't like to learn that way. But there are a lot of lessons that we learn simply by playing games. It's an indirect method of teaching. These children are picking up many things, and they can learn many things through playing games. So another one that's going to happen is both the fine and the gross motor skills. So our kids, they're going to be, depending on the game we play, some of them will help them. They're big things that the child needs to do. They have to run, they have to live. And other things are small, delicate things the kids will be able to learn. Those kids who are physically active, brothers and sisters, they're going to be, and play those kind of games that we're going to talk about, they're going to be less susceptible to getting sick than those kids who always stay, and mommy always kept me safe, and she kept me in my little room, and I never caught a cold. It's different than those kids who run and play. This can help their immune system. And then also, their emotional and physical wellness depends on them playing those games. Right? So that's why we see that direct command from Imam Sadiq, where he's like, let your son play for 7 years. Right? Just, they need to do this. This is a responsibility. So that's one of the reasons that some parents fail to take this responsibility the way that they should. The other one is that for some parents, they think the philosophy for playing games, why is it that we make children play games? For some people, they think the only philosophy is keeping the child busy and entertained. Why do we play games? So the child can be busy. They have to be busy and occupied. Also, they need to be entertained. But that's not the only philosophy. But if I believe that that's all the kid needs, to be entertained and kept busy, you know what the normal, easy way out is? TV, phone, screen, right? Entertained, kept busy, alhamdulillah. Reminder for us again about some of the dangers of the video games and the screen time. Medically, I'm going to mention some of those dangers because no parent wants to hurt their kids. Sometimes we don't know what it does. So let me just mention a couple of things that might happen if we were those parents who said, all my kid needs to do is be entertained. This way they don't bother me. Alhamdulillah. Put on the screen. What happens? Children who grow up addicted to screens and getting entertained in that way, those children end up, if a child will play video games, there's a certain amount of adrenaline that the child will get just by playing those kinds of games. But if they were to play a physical game to get that same drive, that same rush, they wouldn't get it from the regular game. The video games are going to give them such a rush that this child won't later want to play the physical games because I got all I need out of the video games. But it gave me such a rush. Normal games, I have to work so hard to get that same amount of a rush. Number 2. One of the reasons that we needed to play physical games with our children was that natural energy that Allah placed in those children. That natural energy needs to be expelled. We called it non-renewable energy when we talked about it before. In the first 7 years, they have to run and jump and bounce off the walls in order to get that non-renewable energy out. Right? They need to do that. By the way, if children are able to release that energy, and we've read this hadith before, the child will naturally be halim and calm and forbearing after the 7 years. If a child has not, right, then it's going to come back to bite those parents after the 7 years. That energy wasn't released in the first 7 years. Now the parent's struggling with all these tarbiyah issues, but that energy is still pent up inside that child. Now, another challenge that happens is some of those, so the active games that we play do increase the adrenaline, but then the child is able to release it by running and playing. If the child simply plays video games, they increase that energy that they already had. They weren't able to release the natural energy that they had, and now that new energy is stored inside them, right? So these kids, what happens later after I've been sitting for 7 years is something to watch and see. Some of these kids end up being very moody, very irritable, those kids who are always on the screens. Some of them end up not having grit. They can't see something through. They just need to always have this kind of instant gratification. Some of those kids are going to end up being very unnaturally stubborn. And the parents want to know, why is it that this person is like that? But because they got messed up by doing these things. Another side effect is some of these children become unnaturally mischievous. Like, children are supposed to be a little naughty, but by introducing these screens, one of the things that happens is that some of them start to enjoy to bother others. Some of them watch it and learn it during the games. And then sometimes there's even physical effects. You might see like a nervous tick, right, from the kid who's doing that. All right, brothers and sisters, so we were going over the reasons why it is that sometimes a parent wouldn't engage in those practices that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam put so much emphasis on. Now we're on the third reason why it is that sometimes parents won't engage in the practice the way that the Ahlul Bayt have said. And inshallah, once you start to see the case studies, then you'll see, well, is there any room for growth? Is there any room that perhaps we can improve? So, brothers and sisters, the third reason is this. Sometimes what happens is the games that children need to play are pointless for the adult. They're meaningless for the adult. So because I don't see any meaning, I'll give you an example. Let's say, as an example, that my child, the baby, if I shake a rattle, then the child starts laughing, right? They enjoy that. But let's say for me, the rattling is annoying, as an example, right? Or I don't see any point in it, then the person wouldn't do it. Sometimes what happens is because the parent is far removed from their childhood, they don't know just how needed it is for the child to have somebody to play with them and engage with them and talk with them, right? And we just have a general principle. Anytime we want to feel motivated for something, we have to know why it is that we're doing this. What's the reason for it, right? So sometimes that happens. By the way, brothers and sisters, some of you will be blessed with gifted children. Where your child, you can tell, your child's a bit more gifted, a bit more talented. Alhamdulillah, Allah gives us this thing. Even if your child is gifted, I'm going to give you some advice from Ayatollah Behjat. Your child is very gifted, they can memorize, they can do. Even then, the child needs to go through this natural process of being a kid and playing and having fun, right? There was a Sayyid in Qom who was, this child was a child prodigy, right? Memorized Quran, this, that, and the other. And then his father comes and sits with Ayatollah Behjat to get some advice from Ayatollah Behjat. So the child was very gifted, like, believe me, even now you see him, but the Ayatollah Behjat's advice was the following. He said, I only have one request from you, and that is that you have a balanced approach, even to this child who's gifted. Neither he nor you should have things that just are imposed on him. Like you go over and say, well, now that you're gifted, you can make it, you're smarter, I'm going to impose these things. He said, for example, don't say that now that he's memorized Quran, then now Nahj Balagha, now Saifa Sajjad, right? He's gifted, he can do it. He says there shouldn't be pressure, a lot of pressure. His tasks should be easy. At the same time, he should be able to go out on trips, have a lot of lawful recreation, changing locations, going, all of these things, even for the person who is gifted. Every kid, even if they're gifted, needs to go through this process of being able to be a kid and it being okay. Another reason that some parents don't engage with this is sometimes the parents don't know what games to play. What kind of physical games can I play with my kid? I don't have like a running list. So because I don't have that running list, then I become a one-trick pony. I don't know what kind of games to kind of do. So we actually need to make sure that we come up with it. What we need to do, the first thing would be for the parents to realize, when my children play those games, it's chicken soup for their soul, right? Secondly, for some of us, if we remember back to our own childhood, So let's say I don't have that running list. For some of us, if we go back to our own childhood, there were certain games we used to play as kids. For some of us, we can remember. I mean, I'm sure some of you remember. Everybody's not that young that there were physical games that we used to play as kids. So even if I go back to my own memories, that'll help give me that list of games that I can engage my children in. Right? Because if we realize something's necessary, the same way that we won't watch our kid hungry, we'll make it happen. If I realize and I believe the hadith that this is a need, then I'm going to make it happen. There's no way that I'll sit and my kids not do that. Number 5 is a big challenge. Sometimes parents simply aren't motivated. And this is a little scary. Sometimes what happens is the parent just simply isn't motivated. The parent doesn't have the energy to play a physical game with their kids, right? Not only that, if the parent isn't motivated, sometimes when the kid wants to play a game that conflicts with my comfort, my small box of what's okay, as a parent, I push back because it's taking me out of my comfort zone, right? So unmotivated parents, not only will they not create the games or the grounds for their children to play the active games, they'll stop them when they want to play. So this is now a scary hadith from Imam Sadiq. So he says this, Iyaka wa khislatayn. Beware of 2 traits, Imam Sadiq says. He says one of them, al-dhajar wal-kasal. One of them being not having motivation, not having drive, not having push, and the other one is laziness. The Imam says this, in dhajarta lam tasbir ala haqq. If I'm a person who doesn't have motivation, I won't be able to see things through. I won't be able to have sabr to see the results, to stay, to do the right thing. I'll lack that. The other one he says, and if you're lazy, then actually you won't observe the rights that others have. So that's just a warning from the Imam. We have to make sure that we are able to establish this in our children. The next one is a challenge of the modern lifestyle, and this one has several parts. Why is it that parents don't engage in physical games? Part of it is the lifestyle that we live right now, the modern lifestyle. Our modern lifestyle, brothers and sisters, many times doesn't encourage a lot of movement, a lot of harakah, a lot of getting up and doing things, right? Sometimes the world moves around us and we don't move. And the more it moves and we don't move, the better it is. Now, in all honesty, I don't know if this happened to any of you guys. Did any of you guys remember, and you guys from Dearborn, I don't know if this happened to Dearborn. Did you guys used to have to ride the bus to school, or everybody was dropped to school by their parents? Did anybody have to walk? Huh? Okay. So before, people used to take the bus. Does anybody remember where we used to have payphones before everybody had their own cell phone? Does anybody remember when there was a phone in the house, you had to actually go over and use it instead of having to go, like before, like now everybody has their own, right? But there was a phone in the house. I don't know, nobody probably remember. Do you remember maps? No, probably nobody, right? Map, before GPS, right? What happened was we used to actually feel like we used to have to do things. Like nowadays they have DoorDash. You don't even have to bother to go. You can, what's the curbside shopping where I don't even bother to go inside the store. I just pull up in my mom van and they just drop, right? No effort, no walking, no anything, right? So back in the day, there used to be a little bit more movement. Now you'll find some people, and inshallah, this is none of our Hadi parents, but some people go to a parking lot, right? They'll pull up at like Target, and then they'll circle, right? To get as close as they can. I just want to walk as few steps because I don't even want to walk. Okay? Now, there's a problem here with this modern lifestyle. Children are the opponents to the modern lifestyle. They need action. They need harakah. They need to go outside. They need to play. So imagine if you have a sedentary parent. I like to sit. I don't want to be bothered. I want to watch my TV. I want to be on the phone, right? And my child needs to be running and playing and jumping and bouncing off the wall. Who do you think normally wins? You can answer. It's not you guys. For other parents, not you guys. Who normally wins if there's a sedentary parent who doesn't believe in a lot of movement and the child who wants to run and bounce all over the wall? Who normally will win? The parents. They'll impose on the kids their lifestyle, right? Because it's hard. It's difficult. Okay? So then it becomes lose-lose. Sometimes what happens is the children, without even, it's not that the child is making a conscious decision to punish me, but some of the misbehaving that we see is because the kid isn't able to go and run and bounce, right? So the way that the kid is pushing back is when the kid is misbehaving. Remember that hadith of the Imam that it was good for a child to have a lot of movement when they were young, right? And some of the problems can be addressed if we will see a problem, recognize it, and then act on it. Okay? I want to give you an example that I used to see in Iran sometimes. In Iran, sometimes there were a lot of people who would suffer from what we call the lazy eye, right? Where the person's, like one of their eyes isn't, right? Now, if that problem was addressed early and the person forced them, let's say, to wear a patch, then the other eye would get strong. Nobody did that. Now the person is living with that for the rest of their lives, right? So if we can jump on this early and fight back against this modern lifestyle and engage in a lifestyle that does have a lot of haraka and movement, then it'll be much better for these children, right? And I mentioned the idea of how it will come back to bite us later. Sometimes we might think, well, I'm winning right now because I forced them. They push back, but I made it that they sit and they don't bother me. I turned on the TV. It'll come back to bite me later, and then I'll realize. Right? They said, well, not true, inshallah. They said once there were these two snakes, and they were walking along a path together. And then one of the snakes turned to the other snake, and he said, are we poisonous? And the other snake said, I think we're poisonous. We're rattlesnakes. Why wouldn't we be poisonous? He said, why? He said, I just bit my tongue. It's going to come back, and it bites hard. When the kids those parents who turned over to TV and then left it, it comes back, and then when it bites hard. So, what some of the scholars say is this. The modern lifestyle, just imagine this as an example. So we understand how we have to fight, and we have to put moving and walking and doing things and going outside and play, right? Although it's difficult, they say the modern lifestyle, the way that it is kind of like, imagine yourselves being in a large freezer, or not freezer, refrigerator, but it's really cold. And everything in this large freezer encourages you to just sit still. But if you sit still, you'll freeze to death. You need to move to stay alive. So what they tell us is we have to find that motivation to go over and change our lifestyles as opposed to throwing our hands in the air and saying, well, I just can't. It's like this, right? We have to go over and make that. Another one, part of the modern lifestyle, is sometimes what happens is the modern lifestyle is the values that they introduce to us. What they make us think are important are things that are not aligned with the Ahlul Bayt. So for instance, imagine a family, and they got this brand new house, they just moved in, and then their kid went and they painted on the wall, right? Some parents, right? I'm shouting, what's so important to me? The wall, and the wall being neat is more important to me than the scar that I just made on my kid's soul. Sometimes what happens is parents will make what we call a principled mistake. My values weren't aligned with Islamic values. Because of that, I made a mistake that ended up having a horrendous cost. I want to give you two examples of trying to get our values aligned with Islam, and inshallah we'll move on from this. So, in the time of Imam Sadiq, there were two men. One of them's name is Muhammad, and the other one's name is Murazim. So these guys, Murazim was from Madain, so Iraq. They go over and they're now in Medina. So first they go to Hajj. After Hajj, then they go to Medina. When they go to Medina, Murazim falls ill. He gets sick. But he's not so sick that he's going to die. He's bedridden. He's sitting in the house. And Muhammad, his he's like, look, I don't know when I'm going to get a chance to make ziyarah again. I'm in Medina. So he would just keep going to Masjid Nabawi, and this other poor guy is just laying in the bed. He's not bringing him soup. He's not taking care of him. He's just making salah. Ziyarah, man. When am I going to come to Iraq again? Medina again? And Murazim didn't like that. So he complained to Muhammad. He was like, look, that's not right how you're doing this. So Muhammad was an honest person, and he went to Imam Sadiq. When he spoke to Imam Sadiq, I'm here, I'm trying to make ziyarah, dua. He doesn't like it. So the Imam told him this. He says that if you sat with him, that would have been better than you making salat in the masjid. Right? One more example. This is from Allama Tabatabai. So there was a young man. This young man, he was an only child. And his mother, he was responsible for taking care of his mother. And his mother had gotten so sick that now, not only did he have to feed her, but he had to clothe her, he had to change her, and he's an only kid. So finally, he just got tired. And he wrote to Allama Tabatabai, he's complaining. So then Allama Tabatabai told him, he said, well, I'll make a deal with you. He said, I will give you all of the thawab of the Tafsir al-Mizan. Right? Tafsir al-Mizan. 20 years to write that. How many volumes? He said, I will give you all of the thawab of Tafsir al-Mizan if you give me the thawab of one night of you taking care of your sick mother. I'll exchange it with you. So sometimes what happens, we don't realize the opportunity we have, the thawab, right? Because my values haven't been aligned with those Islamic values. Now, the other one is the third reason with the modern lifestyle that we have to kind of keep in mind. We human beings have a real need for many things. One of the things we have a need for is excitement. One of the things we have a need for is variety, joy and happiness, social interaction. We have needs for these things. Sometimes what happens is media, whether it's social media, whether it's me watching TV and movies, it gives me an artificial feeling that that need has been taken care of. Because I'm on social media, I have so many friends, so many people like me, right? I'm what, right? So my need for joy and these things is not there. So when those things aren't there, then I don't feel a need for getting these same things. So for instance, some parents actually think this: my kids need me to play with them. That's what they need in order for them to get healthy. They don't realize I need to play with my kids for myself. I don't feel that need anymore. Because I've stimulated myself in so many other ways, I'm feeling fake satisfied in other ways. I don't feel that need. This is what the modern lifestyle does to us. I don't feel the need to engage with my kids because, alhamdulillah, I'm satisfied. Right? So it doesn't even bother me. And again, we're not saying that the modern lifestyle is a complete monster. Throw out media, burn your cell phones, take an axe to your TV. We're not saying that, right? But who's in charge? Do I run the media in my house or does it run me? Am I addicted to my phone or is my phone at my service? Does it dictate, right? Because then if that's the case, then we have to ask some questions. And this is questions now for every parent. Which one's more important? Is watching TV more important or playing with my kids? Right? Is watching a football game, is that more exciting? Or spending time with my kids? Is it more satisfying to see that excitement that's in the last show that I've been binge watching for a while? Or the peals of laughter of my kids when they're running and playing? When I see somebody crying on TV, some actor or some actress is crying, does that move me more? Or the tears of my own child when they're not able to play? The other one that we have to keep in mind too is the idea that sometimes space is limited. Our spaces are limited. So before, let's say when we were back in the day before, we used to, I don't know about you guys, but it used to be safe to send our kids outside and play outside in the streets. Right? We used to, in my day, we used to go in the woods and we would run and we would play, right? Before there was a bit more access, the lifestyle was maybe a bit more encouraging to have a bit more of the outside lifestyle. But the question is this: if the modern lifestyle I don't have in the house that I live in the area that I'm in, if some of those physical things aren't there, is that okay for me to say, well, that's not there, that's done? Or do I, as a parent, have a responsibility of making it happen? Not just sitting and settling and saying that that's fine. Number 7 is that active games that we have to play do take time. It's not the case that the active game won't take any time. No, if I have to do that, right, it's going to take time off of my hands. And sometimes what happens is I don't feel that necessary motivation. Playing that game does take time, so I don't do that. So there's 2 kinds of parents then who will fail in this part of the test. There's some parents who, for them, they say that Tarbiyah isn't. So two types of parents. One of them who would fail this test because of the challenges with the modern lifestyle. If I don't feel that Tarbiyah is part of the core principles of raising my kids right, then I won't feel the same motivation to go over and do it. Right? I don't feel like there's one time when if I don't play with my kids, they're going to turn out wrong. That's one motivation. Another time, it's good. It's extra. If I do that, that's the icing on top. That's different than if I feel it's an absolute need for me to play with my kids. That's one. Or, God forbid, if there is a parent who Tarbiyah isn't my number 1 priority. Sometimes there are some parents who, for them, education is important. My job, my dream job, but my number 1 priority isn't engaging with my children, talking to them, spending that time with them. This parent also would fail the test. Number 8, we're almost now towards our case studies. Some of us have too few children. Having too few children is another reason that sometimes people don't engage with their children. Brothers and sisters, even if we have children, if you have only one child, then that child is an only child. And your child under 7, either they're playing, or they're sleeping, or they're resting, right? But a lot of their time is actually going to be playing. And if I only have one kid, then that's a lot of weight to be on one person. If I have several children, some people think the opposite. They say, if I only have one kid, then I'll be able to give them all this time and attention, right? But sometimes we actually end up spending more time actually playing with them and needing to play with them than if we have several children. If we have several children, one of the best playmates for kids are other kids. So I'm able to give them or send them to play with other children, the other members of their family. It doesn't absolve me of my need, by the way, to play with them. That, okay, well, I have other kids, that's their job. No, we're going to still get to that, right? Playing with children is great, but playing with your parents is something different. But having too few children, by the way, even if there's a huge age gap between our children, then our children won't be able to get the next kid. Right? One kid is, I'm in a different stage of my life, and now this kid is, right? So we have children, we have a number of them, and then they're close in age, it'll be easier for them to engage. But having too few children, one of the ways that it comes back to bite us is that. The last challenge is this. Sometimes our children themselves aren't motivated. Sometimes the kids don't want to play a physical game. If we see that there's a child who literally doesn't want to play a physical game, that means it's time for us to do our homework and investigate. Something went wrong. The way the child was hardwired, they're supposed to play. Yes, it's more, it's less, different kids. But if your kid literally is just sitting there and doesn't want, alhamdulillah, and it's great, right? Then there's something that I did wrong, right? And there's some specific reasons that we need to find out about, but there's some more general reasons that parents might have done wrong. One of them is, God forbid, if the kid was addicted to screen time. The same way that for us, I get certain pleasures from the screens, and I have to work harder to get that same amount of joy from playing a physical game, once I've gotten used to it, I don't feel that same motivation to go over and do it. The kid now doesn't find, because I have to work harder. I get such a high off of playing the video game, and I don't get that, and I've gotten used to that. So that's one. Sometimes we as parents have failed to make it seem that the video game, or that playing games is attractive. We're going to talk about those 14 ways that we can know, the wise parents. And the last one is that sometimes the video games just seem like less work. So the kid had this experience. In my house, when I would try and play physical games, my parents would jump down my throat. No, you can't do this. Stop. Don't tell her on, right? So after I'm just like, you know what? It's easier. Play the video game. Everybody's happy, right? But that's again me who's done that. Now, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.